Hello and welcome students. We are into the 24th video lecture of the video lecture series made on the subject of machine design, whose subject code is ME303, and the topic which we are going to discuss today is the design of a spring. In this part 2, we are going to discuss about the terminologies used in the case of helical springs. We are also going to discuss the spring materials and the styles of end. So basically this is the part 2 of design of springs, terminology of helical spring, spring materials and styles of end. I am Shri Krishna Mishra, Assistant Professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Suresh Gyan Vihar University, Jaipur. Before moving into the lecture, first of all, let's see what are the objectives of today's lecture. The objectives of today's lecture are, student, we are going to understand the different terms used in a spring. First is to understand the different terms which are used in the design of a spring. Second is to understand about what is a spring index. This is very common term which is used in the design of a spring. Then the third is to understand about active and inactive coils. Generally, the helical spring which you see, the helical tension or extension spring which you see, generally in those springs some coils are basically used to bear the load and some coils act as dead coils. So we will study about the active and inactive coils. This is our third objective. And the fourth objective is to know about styles of ends of springs. There are different styles of the ends of the spring, so we are going to understand about that also. So these are the objective lecture now. So let's move into the discussion now. Students, we have understood about the different types of springs. The springs which are in the form of a helical shape are basically helical springs, as you can see here. Now the terms which are used in spring, first is the diameter of the spring. The diameter, the whole sole diameter is known as the diameter of a spring. And now the spring is made of certain coils. So that particular diameter is known as, this is known as the diameter of the coil. All right, one is the diameter of the spring, second is the diameter of the coil, third is the pitch of the spring. This particular distance between the two corresponding points of pitch of the spring is known as the pitch of the spring. Then after, the free length of a spring, as I have shown you. So in the spring, in the case of a helical spring, this is basically the diameter of the spring is known as the diameter of a spring. Then after this particular, these are the coil diameter. All right, diameter, we can say diameter of a spring rod also. Then after comes the pitch of the spring. This is the distance between the two adjacent coils of the spring is known as pitch of the spring. And then comes the free length. Free length is the when load is not applied, at that time the length is known as the free length of the spring. And then students, when load is applied on the spring, at that time the length of the spring, when load is applied on the spring, then the length of the spring is known as the compressed length. All right, now there are different spring ends. First is your square or closed spring. All right, now what is it? In case of a squared or closed spring, they are the least expensive, they are most widely used, and they tend to buckle under the load. These are the qualities of these type of spring. Then the second is the ground spring. In case of ground spring, students, this is basically the ground spring. All right, you can see its end. In this improved quality, this is an improved quality, can be replaced accurately, and so they don't buckle. They don't buckle. This is the plus point with the grounded ends. Then plain or open springs are those. The third one, the first one in this diagram is the plain or open spring, students. They are used where less solid height is needed. All right, now we are going to design the spring. Now. Now I will elaborate each and every term. So what is small d? We are going to use small d as the wire diameter of the spring. Wire diameter of the spring means basically, student, one is the coil diameter and the other is the wire diameter. Wire diameter means the wire which is used in order to make the spring. The wire which is used in order to make the spring. This is the, as you can see here in the diagram, that this is the cut section. This is the sectional view of the spring, in which you can easily see that this particular circle is showing you the wire size, the cross section of the wire which has been used to make the spring, and the diameter of this particular wire which is used in making the spring is known as the wire diameter, and it is denoted by small d. As you can see here also, we have denoted by small d. Then after, when the wire has been used in order to make the spring, then after that a spring has been made, its inside diameter, its inner diameter, its inside diameter we are writing by di. Di is basically what? Di is inside diameter of the spring coil. Then the outer diameter means the distance from one extreme end to the other extreme end. This is your outside diameter. This is what? This is your outside diameter of a spring coil. Then when you will take out the mean of these two, when you will calculate the mean of this and this, when you will calculate the mean of these two, you will get the mean coil diameter, which we will denote by capital D. How we calculate the mean diameter? We all know how to calculate the mean. It is di plus d naught divided by 2, outer diameter plus inner diameter divided by 2. This is the mean coil diameter of the helical spring. Now moving further, let's see what are the other terms. These are the common terms which we generally see. Now some other terms which are used in gear design are spring index. Spring index is a very important term which is used in the spring design. And what is the meaning of the spring index? It is basically, first of all, it is denoted by letter C, and it is basically the ratio of mean coil diameter to wire diameter. It is the ratio of students mean coil diameter to wire diameter. Capital D represents the mean coil diameter and small d denotes the coil diameter. So capital D is divided by small d will give you capital C. Capital C is what? Capital C is the spring index. All right, it is an important parameter in the design of a spring. Moving further, apart from spring design, now there are three conclusions taken out from the value of spring index. Spring index, basically why it is important? It is important because it indicates the relative sharpness of the curvature of the coil. It denotes the relative sharpness of the curvature of the coil. How we will calculate the sharpness of the curvature of the coil? See, after the calculation of the spring index, if you get the value smaller than 3, this means that spring index is low. All right, and it indicates that there is high sharpness of curvature. It indicates that the curvature is very sharp. All right, it means there is very less difference between the mean coil diameter and wire diameter. As you can see, students, we all know that spring index is basically what? It is the ratio of mean coil diameter, means capital D, divided by small d. Now if the value of C is smaller than 3, this means that there is not much difference between capital D and small d. So for that, when this can happen? This can happen when the coils are made very close to each other and the wire which is used to make the coils of a spring, they are very thick. So what will happen? You can see that too much stress is acting on the wire of the spring, means there is high sharpness of curvature when the value of spring index is smaller than 3. All right, then after, students, when the spring index is low, the actual stresses in the wires are excessive. The stresses due to bending, see, if the wires will be bending in this way, what you are seeing, that there are excessive stresses in the wire due to curvature effect. Here the stresses, the reason for the stresses is the curvature effect. What is curvature effect? These the stresses when they are developed due to high sharpness of curvature, then we say that this stresses is due to the curvature effect. Then in such a spring it is difficult to manufacture, and special care in coiling is required to avoid cracking in some wires. All right, such a spring is difficult to manufacture, and special care is in coiling is required to avoid cracking in some wires. All right. So basically, you all know, in order to bend such type of wires, in order to make them, in order to give them a shape of a wire, of a spring, you can see that it is very difficult to manufacture. Lot of effort is required when the spring index is less than 3. Here there is high sharpness of curvature. So this was the low spring index case. Then comes the high spring index case. When the spring index is greater than 15, we consider the spring index as a high spring index case. And it results in large variation in coil diameter. It results in large variation in coil diameter. As you can see, students, your spring index is wire diameter upon coil diameter. All right. So this means that coil diameter upon wire diameter, if this value is very much greater, all right, if this value is greater than even 15, this means that there is very sharp difference between capital D and small d. Capital D is very much greater than small d. This means that the coil which you are making from springs, they are of very larger diameter in this way, and the wire which is used to make this spring has very small diameter. And what will happen whenever in such a spring you will apply a load? Whenever in such a spring you will apply a load, students, you will find that this spring can get buckled. Buckled means in this way it can lose its path. It can lose its path and might get tangled with each other. So in the case when the spring index is very high, means greater than 15, then in that case there is large variation in coil diameter. You can see your coil diameter is very larger than the wire diameter, and due to this such a spring is prone to buckling and also tangles easily during handling. Whenever you will use it, you will see that such type of spring tend to get tangled with each other, and it is very much prone to buckling, as I have already explained you in short. Then the third is if the spring index is neither smaller than 3, neither greater than 4, means the spring index is if in between 4 to 12, then it is considered as a better for manufacturing consideration. As far as manufacturing of a spring is considered, the spring index, if it is between 4 to 12, if the spring index is between 4 to 12, then we consider it as an ideal one for manufacturing. All right, means it is comfortable. Its manufacturing will be very comfortable. Then this was the discussion regarding the spring index. As I have already told you, spring index is a very important parameter, and it decides the relative sharpness of curvature of the coil, and it also determines the manufacturing considerations of the design of the spring. Then the next term that is of very much importance is the solid length. Now what is solid length and what is free length? First of all, we will have to see what is free length, then only we can understand the solid length. So free length is basically what? Free length, as the name itself suggests, is defined as the axial length of an unloaded helical compression spring. Means the natural length of a spring when it is not loaded with any force. The natural length of the spring when it is not loaded with any force, if it is placed in a vertical direction, the natural length of the spring, if it is not loaded, that natural length is known as the free length of the spring, or in other words, it can be defined as the axial length of an unloaded helical compression spring. And here we don't consider any external force acting on the spring. We don't consider any external force acting on the spring. Now there is a relation which can only be understood when we have understood the what is compressed length and what is solid length. So let's, and what is total axial gap. So let's understand what is compressed length, what is solid length, and what is total axial gap. Solid length, when you apply the load on a spring in such a way that all the coils of the spring, they touch each other, means all the adjacent coils of the spring touch each other. You are applying such a high load on the spring that all the coils are touching each other, all the adjacent coils are touching each other, students. Then that case is known as the case of the solid length. Means the axial length at that time, means the distance from one of the extreme end of the spring to the other extreme end of the spring along the axial direction, will give you the value of the solid length. But always keep in mind, solid length is always taken out when it is loaded to its full extent, such that the adjacent coils touch each other. So by definition, we can say that as the axial length of the, it is the axial length of the spring which is so compressed that the adjacent coils touch each other. A spring is completely compressed and no further compression is possible, since the coils, adjacent coils of the springs, they are touching each other, means there is no further possibility of bearing of any compression. All right. In such case, the length is known as the solid length. In such case, the length of the spring is known as solid length. So if the number of turns, if the total number of coils of the spring is nt, and in subscript t, then what will be the total solid length? So you all know this is small, these lengths, students, these are the number of coils. As you can see, the total length will be equal to diameter of the coil, into number of the total coils, It is very self-explanatory that if we have to find the solid length, we will have to multiply the number of the coils with the diameter of each coil. This means that solid length is equal to nt into d, where nt is the total number of coils and d is the diameter of the coil, wire diameter, for example, all right. And what is the free length? That I have already told you. Now if we want to bring a relation between the free length and solid length, how we will derive the relation? The relation can be derived in this way, that the gap between the coils, the total gap between the coils, if that you add with the solid length, then you will get the value of free length. Means if you want to find a relation between the free length and the solid length, how you can get solid length? All right, then plus total axial gap, whatever is the gap between the coils, plus the deflection. When the load is applied, then there is deflection of the coils, plus that deflection will give you the value of free length. All right, now we will have to understand what is compressed length in order to find the relation between the free length and the compressed length. Compressed length, as the name itself suggests, student, it is that length of the spring which is available when it is loaded with some load. All right, it is defined as, compressed length can be defined as, a student, as the axial length of the spring which is subjected to maximum compressive force. Whenever you apply the maximum compressive force here, so see, don't get confused with solid length, because here compressed length and solid length are very different to each other. In compressed length, we assume that the maximum load is acting on the spring, but we don't assume that the coils touch each other, that the adjacent coils touch each other. We don't assume in the case of compressed length. All right, so this is basically the axial length of the spring when it is loaded to the maximum compressive force. All right, as you can see here in the diagram also, students, here you can see in the diagram, this is the diagram. It is loaded with maximum compressive load, and then at that time the length of the spring from here to here. This will give you the value of compressed length. But if someone asks you, in this case the spring is subjected to maximum deflection del. All right, maximum deflection delta. This in the case of compressed length, whenever we calculate the compressed length, we assume that the deflection of the spring is the maximum. Beyond that there can be no deflection. All right, and so there should be some gap between the coils at the maximum deflected position to avoid clashing between them. Therefore, always whenever compressed length should not be equal to or near to the solid length. Why? Always there should be some gap between the coils in order to avoid the clashing between them. If the coils will be very closer to each other, what will happen? There will always be chances of the coils clashing with each other. Therefore, the compressed length means the length that is obtained when maximum load, maximum compressive force is acting on the spring. That particular length should not at all be equal to solid length, or it should not be near to that solid length. Solid length is basically what? Solid length is that length which is obtained when the spring is loaded to such an extent that the adjacent coils of the springs, as you can see here, the adjacent coils of the spring touch each other. They touch each other. Then that case is known as the solid length case. So never the solid length should be equal to compressed length. Now if we want to find a relation between compressed length and free length, we can say that maximum deflection plus compressed length will give you the value of free length of a spring. Maximum deflection del plus compressed length will give you the value of free length of a spring. Will give you the value of free length of the spring. And solid length, relation between solid length and free length: solid length plus deflection plus the gap between the coils, total gap between the coils. This should give you the value of free length. It should give you the value of free length of the coil. All right. Now in case of compressed length, students, the clashing allowance or total gap is generally taken as 15% of maximum deflection. Now this is generally a rule, a thumb rule, that always the allowance or the total axial gap means if you total these mini gaps which are in between the coils, if you total these mini gaps, students, the gap which you will get will be known as the total axial gap. So this total axial gap, it is generally taken as 15% of maximum deflection. 15% of maximum deflection. All right. Sometimes an arbitrary decision is taken and it is assumed that there is a gap of 1 mm to 2 mm between adjacent coils under maximum load condition. All right, generally we take a gap of 1 mm to, if there is not given in the question, if it is not given in the question that what is the gap between each of the coils, each of the adjacent coils, so generally we take 1 mm to 2 mm gap between the adjacent coils under maximum load conditions. So this way we can say that if you want to calculate the total number of gaps, total gap, how we can calculate the total axial gap? Total axial gap can be calculated in this way. First, whatever is the gap between two adjacent coils, that you will have to multiply with the number of coils minus 1. Whatever is the gap between two adjacent coils, you will multiply that gap with the number of coils subtracted by 1. Nt minus 1 into gap between adjacent coils will give you the value of total gap, total axial gap. So these relations are very important, students, whichever I have told to you like this. This is an important equation or relation which we will use in designing. Apart from this, the two relations which I have told to you here above, like solid length is equal to number of turns into diameter. Which diameter? Wire diameter. So Nt into d is your solid length. And then after, the relation between free length, compressed length and solid length. This is also important. Free length is equal to compressed length plus delta, and it is also equal to solid length plus total length plus delta. solid length plus total axial gap plus delta. All right. Then after, students, moving further, this is the compiled diagram of all the three. This is when low load is applied, then the length is known as the free length. When load is applied to the maximum extent, then in that case the deflection of the spring, the compression of the spring, the deflection of the spring is known as delta, that is the deflection. All right. And then after, the gap between the adjacent coils, the gap between the adjacent coils, this gap is known as the gap between adjacent coils. So in order to calculate the total axial gap, we multiply this gap with nt minus d, means number of turns minus 1. All right, nt minus 1. And the third length is the solid length, when the spring is loaded to an extent that the adjacent coil touch each other. Then in that case we get the length. Then in that case we get the solid length of the coil. So these are the three types of length which are used in case of a spring, helical spring. Then there is one more term, students, which is known as the pitch of the coil. What is the pitch of the coil? The pitch of the coil is defined as the axial distance between adjacent coils in uncompressed state of a spring. When the spring is uncompressed, then in that case the axial distance between adjacent coil is known as the pitch of the coils. All right, and it is denoted by free length upon nt minus 1. So as you can see here in the diagram also, students, in the diagram also you can see that this particular distance between the adjacent points of two adjacent coils, that is known as the pitch of the spring. It is the axial distance. By definition we can say it is the axial distance between adjacent coils in uncompressed state of spring. Whenever there is no load acting on the spring, no load acting on the spring, in that case the axial distance between two adjacent coils is known as the pitch of the coil. And if we have to calculate by formula the pitch of the coil, so how we will calculate? Pitch length of the coil, pitch of the coil is equal to free length upon nt minus 1. Free length of the spring means uncompressed length of the spring upon nt minus 1, which is equal to free length upon nt minus 1. Then one of the important parameters of a spring is the stiffness. It is a property of the spring, stiffness. And what is it? It is defined as, stiffness is defined as, a student, as the force required to produce unit deflection. It is the force which is required to produce unit deflection. It is the force which is required to produce the unit deflection. Now what is unit deflection? This P by delta will give you the value of stiffness of the spring, and it is denoted by a small k. It is denoted by k. All right, P by k is what? P by delta, where P denotes the force that is acting on the spring and delta is the deflection. So force per unit deflection will give you the value of stiffness of the spring. It will give you the value of stiffness of the spring. All right, so stiffness is a very important property as far as spring is concerned. Then these are the parameters. Then after, there is one more thing, that is the active and inactive coils. Always, students, there are some coils in the spring which are only used for providing the base to the spring. They don't aid in sustaining the load. They don't aid in supporting or bearing the load that is acting on the spring. Such coils of the springs are known as inactive coils, and those coils which actually take the whole of the load of the spring which is acting on the spring, that type of coils are known as active coils. So basically, students, active coils are the coils in the spring which contribute to spring action, all right, and support the external force and deflect under the action of the force. means those coils basically which have the contribution to the spring actions. Means basically why the spring is used, it is used to get compressed and to bear the shocks and vibrations. So those is a part of the springs, are those number of coils of the springs which contribute to this particular action and support the external force. All right, they are known as the active coils, and they are the only ones which deflect under the action of the force. Then a portion of the coil at each end. Now these are the active coils. All right, I hope you have understood what are active coils. Now the portion of the coil, this like this at the top here and here at the bottom. These two portion of the coil at each end, which is in contact with the seat, all right, which is in contact with the base, with the seat, and which does not contribute to spring actions. You can see that the one which is at the top and at the bottom, they don't contribute to the spring action, and therefore they are known as inactive coils. Therefore they are known as the inactive coils. Inactive, name as the name suggests, inactive means they are not active. They generally don't aid in support for the external force. They don't contribute to the spring action, and they don't also deflect under the action of the load. All right, basically they don't support the load and do not deflect under the action of external force. Now how you will calculate the active number of coils, inactive number of coils? So inactive number of coils can be calculated by the total number of coils minus the active number of coils. The total number of coils subtracted by the active number of coils will give you the value of inactive coils, I hope you have understood inactive coils and active coils. Inactive coils is equal to NT minus 1. NT denotes the total number of coils and N denotes the active number of coils. Now students, active inactive coils you have understood. Now it is very important to make you understand about the different styles of end. As I have already told you that inactive coils does not aid in the compression effect of the spring. So there are different styles of the ends of the spring. Generally we use the 4 types of ends of a spring. One is the plain end. As you can see, this is the plain end. All right. Second is the plain end but grounded. All right. Third is the square ends, and the fourth is the square and ground ends. So basically 4 type of ends are made of the spring, and generally the number of active turns which are considered in all the 4 are different from each other. In the case of plain ends, in which we generally don't do with the end of the spring, we don't do any alteration or change or any modification with the end of the spring, are generally known as plain ends spring. And in these type of spring, generally the active number of turns are equal to the total number of springs. Total number of turns means and active turn is equal to active coil is equal to total number of coils. All right. So basically generally this is not used. Generally we use plain and ground ends, and in plain and ground ends what we do, these ends of the springs, they are cleared, they are machined in such a way so that they can be kept in the base, they can be kept somewhere, they can be placed somewhere. And in the case of plain and ground ends, generally the active number of coils are taken equal to total number of coils minus half, because we are removing the half portion from the top and from the bottom also. So NT minus half will give you the total number of active coils in the case of plain and ground ends. Then in the case of a square ends, students, the ends of the spring are made in the form of a square, and in that case if the ends are squared, we take the number of active turns as equal to NT minus 2. We take the number of active turns equal to NT minus 2 for the case of square ends. Now if we take a combination of ground, if we take the combination of ground as well as square ends, then we will get what we will get. We will get the square and ground ends. Here the ends are squared also, and they are machined also, so that they can be kept somewhere, they can be placed somewhere, they can be easily fitted somewhere. In these cases the active number of coils are not the total number of coils. the active number of coils are not equal to the total number of coils, but they are equal to 2. You will have to subtract 2 from the total number of coils in order to get the active number of coils. All right, so these are the different ends. All right, and in the case of, these are the ends of a helical compression spring. Or keep in mind, these are the styles of end of a helical compression spring. In the case of compression spring, generally you need the ends to be modified in such a way so that they can be kept somewhere, they can be placed somewhere. If you use the plain end, then in that case, though you can have all the number of turns equal to the active turns, but it is not possible. So therefore we always use the grounded ends. In grounded ends, the ends are machined in such a way so that they can be placed somewhere, but the active number of turns are lessened by half amount, means NT minus half will give you the active number of turns. Then in case of square ends, the number of active turns is subtracted by 2. Then in the case of square and ground ends, the same, the number of active turns is equal to NT minus 2. So this you should keep in mind. In the case of numericals, we will see the utility of these values. Then in the case of helical extension spring, helical extension spring or tension spring, which are made in order to bear the tensile load, so in these cases, generally the ends of the springs are in this shape. One is the V hook. The end of the spring is made in the shape of a V hook. Then you can also see a rectangular type of hook. The ends of the extension springs are made in the form of a rectangular hook. Then somewhere you can also see a circular hook. Circular hook somewhere. Circular hook are known as the full hook, complete hook. You would have seen this. Generally in maximum cases we see a full hook. Then extended hooks are also seen in some springs. These are the extended hooks, in which the ends of the springs are extended to some extent, and then you are provided with a full hook. All right, so these are the different styles of ends of a helical extension spring. One thing you should always keep in mind, that in the case of helical extension spring or helical tension spring, we can say, rather, all coils are active coils. Here you don't need any relation between the total number of coils and the active number of coils. No relation is required here. All right. Why? Because all the coils here aid in bearing the tensile load. Therefore all coils are active coils in the case of helical extension spring. Then here we can take active number of coils, N is equal to NT, total number of coils. All right, now students, let's move further and talk about the different type of materials which are used for manufacturing of spring. So spring materials, first of all, the selection of the spring materials depend on a number of factors. What are those factors? First is the load which is acting on the spring. The amount of load which is acting on the spring, this is a very important consideration in that deciding of the material used for manufacturing of a spring. All right. Second, environmental conditions, the conditions in which the spring will be used, that is also important, because on the basis of that, if the environmental conditions are corrosive, then in that case we will not use any material which has the property of corrosion. Then third, fatigue life is also important. If you want to give high fatigue life, then material should be such which can sustain the high fatigue. All right. Then range of stress through which spring will operate. Then if the stresses which we are acting on the spring, if that is also known to you, then it will be very better in selecting the spring material. All right. If the load is very high, if the stresses are very high, then we will use such a material which can bear the high stresses. Then comes the limitation on mass and volume. Sometimes there is limitation of mass and volume where the spring has to be used. Sometimes there is a limitation of the area in which the spring can be used. So that is also an important consideration in spring materials. Now the four basic varieties of steel wires. These are the four basic varieties of steel wires. First is the patented and cold drawn wire. First is your patented and cold drawn wire. Second is the oil hardened and tempered spring wires and valve spring wires. This is the unalloyed. Third is the oil hardened and tempered steel wires. And fourth is the stainless steel spring wires for normal corrosion resistance. What are these? These four varieties, let's study one by one. First is the patented and cold drawn steel wires. These are the two terms related to this type of spring wire, which is patented and cold drawing. These are the two words which are used here, you can see. What is the meaning of patenting? Patenting means it is defined as the heating the steel above the critical range and followed by rapidly cooling. The process of patenting means you are first of all heating the steel to a very high temperature, to a critical range, and then you are rapidly cooling it. Alright, this operation produces very tough uniform structure which is suitable for severe cold working. They are made from high carbon steel, alright, and contains 0.85 to 0.95% of carbon, and they are also the least expensive among all the spring materials. Patented and cold drawn wires are mainly used in springs subjected to static forces and moderate fluctuating forces. Alright, so this was your patented and cold drawn wire, which is formed by the process of patenting, in which at high temperature the steel is heated and then it is rapidly cooled, and it is generally used for moderate fluctuating forces and when the spring is subjected to static load, and it is the least expensive among all. Second is the oil hardened and tempered spring wires and valve spring wires. Here the material contains 0.55 to 0.75% of carbon. Alright, and this is cold drawn and then hardened and then tempered. First it is cold drawn, then hardened and then tempered. And the valve spring wire, they contain generally 0.60 to 0.75% of carbon, and it is also the highest quality of oil hardened and tempered steel wire. There are basically two grades of unalloyed oil hardened and tempered spring steel wires and valve spring wires, which is SW and NW. These are the two grades of this type of wires. SW is basically for those springs which are subjected to fluctuating stresses, and VW are those which are subjected to high magnitude of fluctuating stresses. Basically, SW means medium fluctuating stresses. Wherever you have to use the spring for medium for bearing the moderate fluctuating stresses, you use SW type of grade, and when you have to use the spring for very high magnitude of fluctuating stress, then you use the VW type of spring grade. So this was your oil hardened and tempered steel wire. Then after this, the third is the oil hardened and tempered steel wire, but it is alloyed. So basically, as the name suggests, here we use the alloy of chromium vanadium steel and chromium silicon steel. Alright, and this contains the carbon percentage. This is the carbon percentage of this is the chromium percentage, and this is the vanadium percentage. And the plus point with this is that it is used for application involving high stresses and for springs subjected to impact or shock loads. Chromium vanadium steel and chromium silicon spring steel, this is used for shock or impact loading. This is also used for shock and impact loading, and here the carbon percentage is 0.51 to 0.59%. Coming into the fourth one, student, these are the three types of spring materials which are used. Now let's come into the multiple choice question. Students, let's discuss some multiple choice questions. So what is the first multiple choice question? Which of the following functions can be performed by the spring? We all know it can be used to store energy. Alright, it can be used to absorb shock. It can be used to measure force. Means all the four are correct. Option D is the correct option. Then question number 2, the helix angle is very small, about 2 degrees. The spring is called open coiled spring. Is it correct? So we all know that it is not a open coiled spring. The spring which has very less degree, which has very small helix angle, that is known as closed coil helical spring. When the helix angle is small, the plane containing each coil is very close to each other. Coming into the multiple choice question number 3, what is the question saying? The helical spring wire of helical torsion spring both are subjected to torsional shear stresses. So this is not true. The wires of helical torsion spring is subjected to bending stresses. Alright. Here in the case of torsional springs, they are subjected to bending stresses. So B, it is a false statement. Option B is the correct. Coming into the MCQ number 4, the longest leaf of a leaf spring is called center leaf. Is it correct? No. I will go deep into this discussion. This longest leaf is not known as the center leaf, it is known as the master leaf. So it is B is the correct option. Coming into multiple choice question number 5, multi-leaf springs are not recommended for automobile and railroad suspension. This is a false statement, because we all know that multi-leaf springs are used for heavy suspensions and that is needed in railways. B. The spring index is the ratio of wire diameter to the coil diameter. This is correct, as we have already seen in the discussion also. Spring index is basically the ratio of wire diameter to the coil diameter. Coming into MCQ number 7, if the spring index is 2.5, what can be concluded about stresses in the wire? We all know spring index is less than 3. This means that there are high stresses in the wire. Then question number 8, a spring index 15 is prone to buckling. Is it correct? Yeah, that is very correct, because here the spring index is greater than 12, and whenever the spring index is greater than 12, this means that such type of wires are very prone to buckling. Coming into MCQ number 9, if the spring index is compressed completely and the adjacent coil touch each other, the length of the spring is called as, we all know, if the adjacent coils touch each other, then the length which is obtained is the solid length. A is the correct option. Coming into the last multiple choice question, if the number of coils are 8 and wire diameter is 3, then solid length is given by, we all know, it will be 8 number of coils into the wire diameter of the coil. It will be 8 into 3, 8 3 is 24. C is the correct answer. So all the multiple choice questions we have discussed, students. I hope you have understood. For references, you can use any of the books which are listed here in the screen. Thank you, students. Thank you and have a nice day.